This is the Haulin Assets podcast, where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Haulin Assets. This is episode number 88. Today, we're talking about September financials, September 2021, in case you're listening to this far in the future.
They're probably listening to it in 2051 because it'll still be relevant.
That's correct. I'm your host, Craig. Over there, he is Chris. Hey, Chris.
How you doing?
I'm all right. It's a much better week. I was just telling Chris about the incredible shoulder issues I've had in the last week, but I'm back up and running. I've never been in more pain in my life. But now I'm ready to talk trucks, Chris.
Good.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. So that was my week. I was essentially crying on the couch for about 4 days straight. How about you? How was your week?
Not that bad. We're in the process of moving, which is like my least favorite thing in the world. So yeah. I haven't particularly had the most exciting week either.
Well, I mean, there's excitement. It's not necessarily fun.
No,
but
it's not fun at all.
That is excitement. Anyway, today we are talking, like I said, about September financials. Now, as has become the norm with these financials episodes, we have something to talk about at the beginning, then we'll talk about the financials, and then we'll do the impact tip at the end. So stick around for all of that, and make sure you go to haulinassetsllc.com to check out full show notes and links and all the things. Find us on Facebook. You can leave comments there for us to address at a future date. And don't forget to go to iTunes or whatever it's called now. Go to Spotify, go to all the places, and rate this podcast 5 stars if you enjoy what we do. All right, now that that's out of the way, Chris, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about something before we got to the financials, right?
Yeah, I want to talk about drivers because right now, I mean, drivers, we talk about it fairly regularly on the show. Yeah. And in the industry, it's always hiring drivers, and drivers is always one of the top concerns of any trucking company. So if you've got a small fleet, drivers is always on the forefront of your mind. Hiring drivers is, if you can solve that problem within your company, you can usually have a pretty successful trucking company. So it's a critical aspect, and now more so than ever. Like it's probably as hard as it's ever been to hire drivers,
just because the drivers are in such demand.
They're in high demand. We're losing more and more drivers because of a variety of different things, whether it's because of the drug testing regulations or it's an aging population, so more and more are retiring, and we're not hiring younger guys at the rate needed to come on to keep backfill up. And so, yeah, it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah. So what are you doing about that? How are you going about this?
Well, we've talked a little bit about how to, and that's one of the things that we've addressed. But today I want to talk a little bit more about, kind of trying to a little bit of the retaining piece of drivers. And it's really kind of talking about that initial kind of the onboarding process, I would say. So probably the first couple of months that a driver's driving for you, it can often be a little bit of a rocky time. And I kind of liken this to my first year of marriage.
Yeah. Okay. All right. How so?
Well, so to give you a little bit of background, my wife and I's first year of marriage was a little bit rough. We were
sounds like the first 2 of mine.
Well, it took you 2 years. It only took me 1 year. Now I feel better about myself.
It took me 2 years to figure out how to not make her cry when we argued about something.
Yeah.
So that was the communication issue.
I can relate to that. For the first year of our marriage, we were kind of like trying to figure each other out and learn a little bit. Like I had to learn that it wasn't okay to just leave one dirty dish in the dishwasher or in the sink. You couldn't even do that. You had to wash your dishes as you put them in the sink. And I also learned, if you remember right, we've talked about this early on in the podcast, that you don't make egg salad sandwiches with dill pickle relish. You use sweet pickle relish, and apparently that's a real bad thing. And so over that first year, I had to learn all these hard lessons in life.
The first one, the dishes thing, I was going to sarcastically say, "Oh, what a monster," because that's a good habit to get into. But egg salad sandwiches should, in fact, be made with dill pickle relish. Oh, so what a monster!
Oh yeah, if that's if that's the side of the fence you're on, my wife's going to have words with you.
No doubt.
And it's not a pretty conversation. I learned that. So that's not a subject we talk about anymore.
But the first year of marriage comes and goes, and apparently you guys figured it out.
Yeah,
right?
we've figured it out. We've been married 19 years now, but we still kind of joke about that first year of marriage. Like when people ask us how long we've been married, and if my wife's there standing next to me, I always say 1 year less than the reality because I don't count that first year.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our little inside joke.
So, okay, so how's that like bringing on a new driver? I mean, I can kind of assume what you're talking about is that feeling each other out, the understanding communications. I mean, you talked about, was it the last episode or the one before, when you talked about understanding driving styles and, making sure that you dispatch the right driver on the right load, that sort of thing, right?
And that's a big part of it. So there's a lot of things that you're learning out about each other. So that driving style is one of them. There's some drivers, like we've mentioned before, that want to run 700 miles a day. There's other drivers that may only want to do 500 miles a day. So it's kind of figuring out that good balance for each other. It's a driver learning a new ELD system, probably learning how you fuel your trucks, learning kind of your maintenance and how you communicate and how you pay lumper fees. And there's just all these kind of things that are different from one company to another. So the driver's got to learn all that. And then you as the trucking company learn how the driver likes to operate. You learn, places they like to go into, places they don't like to go into. And so you're just, it's kind of turbulent for that first month or two. And it can cause stress on both sides. It can cause stress for the company. It can cause stress for the driver. And so one of the things that you should always, talk to your drivers about that going into, their first, when you first bring them on board is, we need to have patience with each other, and if you're a good company, you're going to take, what the driver's wants and needs into account. You can't necessarily bend over backwards all the time, but you try to find a good, happy medium that's a win-win for everybody, and it's kind of learning where that win-win is.
Yeah. So charity goes a long way.
Charity goes a long way.
Both ways.
The golden rule.
Yeah.
It applies to trucking too.
Well, how about that? Now that's what I'm realizing after 2 years of this podcast is that so much of trucking is it's applicable elsewhere, and a lot of other stuff is applicable in trucking as well. Yeah.
I feel like we're getting a little churchy. Yeah.
I was going to go with your military experience or something like that.
That too. It applies everywhere.
There you go. Well, that's a good thing to consider. I think, like you say, it's a good thing to consider both ways. And so for anybody listening, if you're thinking about bringing on drivers, or if you still are a driver, and you haven't quite made the leap to owner-operator yet, this is a good thing to consider if you're an employee as well. So
absolutely,
having a little patience with those around you.
And that's what it really just boils down to is being patient with each other. And this principle kind of applies to lots of different areas of trucking and business in general and life in general. It's a lot easier to retain something or keep something that you have than it is to go out and find a new one. So whether that's sales or new routes or new loads or anything like that, if you've got a contract, finding new contracts are hard.
Yeah.
Finding new drivers is hard. Keeping the ones that you have typically is a lot easier. And so the last thing you want, it's easier to bring stuff in than it is to let it go out the door. So, or it's vice versa. It's easier to retain what you've got than it is to bring new stuff in. And so it's worth it to be patient in that initial period so that you keep who you've got rather than having to go out and find somebody, because that's just costly. It's a headache. It's not easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, should we talk about some finances?
Let's go to the numbers.
We good? Okay.
This is my favorite part. Remember,
I think this is a lot of people's favorite part, from what I'm gathering. But yeah, we're talking about September 2021 numbers. Now, August was a really good month. July was a struggle. August was a great month. How did we do in September? How are things looking? Where do we want to start?
Overall, it was a very good month. Even some records.
Okay. What kind of records are we talking about? Miles run?
Let's see. Miles run was a record.
Okay.
By just a little bit.
All right. What's the total number?
It was 46,541 miles.
That's on 4 trucks.
4 trucks.
Okay. And so what was the previous high?
It was 331 miles less.
Okay. All
so
right.
we broke the record by Less
Not
than
bad.
1%, but hey, moving in the right direction.
A record's a record, Chris.
A record's a record.
Yeah, ask somebody in Major League Baseball, who gets the batting title that year, how much a 1 percentage point is
Yeah,
worth.
it makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so that's the miles run. Deadhead miles, how do we do there?
2,376, which is 5.1%.
Okay, so that's right on target. Yeah, great. And the total revenue then for this month came out to, drum roll please,
127,527.
I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
It's a big number, 127,527.
That's definitely a new record.
Yeah,
by a long ways, isn't it?
I think about $10,000 if I remember right. Maybe a little bit more than that. I should have wrote down the number. I want to say last month was 116,000. So around 10,000 more.
Wow, that's seriously impressive.
Yeah,
okay, so all right, let's finish up the numbers, then we can talk about the whys and the whats and the wherefores. But the rate per mile then came out to what?
$2.74 a mile.
Hey, not bad.
Not bad at all. I don't think that's our best month, but it's up there and it's a really good rate.
Yeah, so running a record number of miles at a not quite a record rate, but pretty close is put you guys looking really good on the revenue. Great. So where do we want to go with these numbers? What do you want to talk about as far as how you got here? I mean, can we chalk it up to anything other than this was a great month for rates and we went hard?
We had a couple drivers running pretty hard. I mean, that was part of it. The fact that the rates are really good right now is another part of it. So it just was kind of, there's not really one thing you can kind of point to other than the economy is really good.
Yeah.
That makes it easier to run hard. That makes the rates really good. And so it's good. And you kind of have to take advantage of that while you can, while the iron's hot.
Yeah. Do you, looking into your crystal ball, because I know you've got one, you understand the future of macroeconomics, Chris, right? So what does this mean going forward? I mean, this bubble's got to pop sometime. I mean, maybe not catastrophically, but things can't look this good forever, can they?
They won't. But everything is indicating and pointing towards another good year next year. Mm-hmm. And most people even say it should be pretty good going into 2023. But I think that's in the freight market, and you kind of see how things go with freight. I think you get into more than a year out. It's a lot of things can change in a year. Mm-hmm. But I'm pretty confident, and I think most people are pretty confident that things are going to be pretty good for the next year. So 2022 should be another really good year for us.
Yeah. So pulling back to this month, September versus August, tell me about some of the differences that you saw. Obviously, higher revenue, but what else are we looking at in the difference between the 2 months?
Well, you missed one number.
Didn't
we? Did we do net income?
Ooh,
that's the important one.
Profit.
Yeah,
I want to know. Yeah, I want to know that. What'd you get?
It wasn't quite as good as last month.
Oh, really?
And we'll talk a little bit about why, but it was $38,702.03.
Cry me a river, Chris. Cry me a river. Only $38,702.
Yeah. So we'll take it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It was a great month. So what? It wasn't. Although we set a couple records, miles run, total revenue. The profit wasn't quite where it was last month. How do we account for that difference?
There's a couple things. One of the biggest things was higher driver pay. And we paid almost $7,000 more in driver pay in September than we did in August. And it's really just kind of how payroll worked out. There were a handful of little things that made that $7,000 difference. So it's not like there's one little thing that we can point on. It was several things kind of accumulated together and created that $7,000 difference.
Was it one of those things where it's like, oh, there are 5 Fridays this month instead of 4, something like that?
I actually thought that was what it was going to be. So that's the first thing that I looked at when I saw that difference, but it wasn't. There were 4 Fridays in September and 4 Fridays in August, so that wasn't it. It was more, a few of the drivers ran a little harder, and they kind of how they ran harder at the end of August, which actually paid out payroll in September, and then a couple of them ran a little lighter at the end of September, which will pay out higher or
in October.
October. So it's kind of one of those things. Timing of things and a few other little things created that.
And this is why, I mean, you mentioned early on in the life of this podcast, you said, hey, we're going to look at monthly numbers, but really you kind of got to zoom out a little ways. You look at your quarterlies, you look at your yearlies to get the real picture. Because, sometimes months are just weird like that, right?
Yep. There's always spikes and valleys. And even you think a month is 30 days is a decent amount of time, but things can fluctuate a ton from month to month. They can even fluctuate a little bit from quarter to quarter. So you get a clearer picture when you look at things on a quarterly basis. You get a much clearer picture when you look at things annually.
Yeah. And if you've got 4 drivers who are saying, some of whom are saying, hey, I want to work harder, you're not going to cry about that, I assume.
No.
So, and then what about last month? You said that maintenance and repairs was pretty light compared to July. Mm-hmm. How did it look this month?
A lot higher this month.
That's
a big part of it.
So that caught up.
It was about, I didn't write that number down either, but if I remember off the top of my head, it was like another about $7,000 in maintenance and repairs, where last month was only, I think, right around $2,000. So, significant. Nothing big, no big major repairs. Just we had a couple trucks go through their maintenance. So I think we replaced some tires and things like that.
The regular day-to-day stuff. Anything else that we want to pull out from the P&L, the profit and loss?
No, it's kind of interesting because the rest of it was really pretty similar. Yeah. Everything else was about the same.
So as Haulin Assets grows, as you add more trucks to this fleet, would that sort of thing, when we're talking about maintenance and repairs, we're talking about other expenses, will that start to smooth out the peaks and valleys? Because, hey, this truck had high repair costs this month, but then it settled down and another truck had high costs. And, does that make sense?
Like, it does, yeah.
Will increasing that number level out those expenses?
It does. It kind of takes the randomness away. You could say it smooths it out, because like you said, if we have one truck today and we only have 4 that has a really high a big spike, you see it. But if you've got 100 trucks and one truck has a big spike, it kind of gets absorbed across the rest of your trucks. And you probably had a few trucks that month that had no expense, and so it kind of works itself out, evens itself out.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Good. So as far as the numbers for September go, is there anything else that we need to talk about before we move to the impact tip?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Let's do it then. Impact tip. What do you got for me, Chris?
I'm going to reach back into one of the things you hear in the military all the time. Fail to plan to fail.
Okay. Fail to plan to fail.
Yep. And the reason I'm kind of thinking about that right now is we're getting up close to the end of one year and the beginning of a new year. And we've talked a little bit about annual planning before in the past, but this is just kind of a reminder for everybody. This is the time when you kind of really start it. You don't want to start your annual planning for next year on the 1st of January. You really want to start thinking about it in the November, December timeframe, so that you can kind of have some of that stuff done and thought through and can really kind of hit the next year running.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good. So, gosh, that's a pretty quick and easy impact tip. Yep. Don't want to go into any more depth on that one?
I would just say, be deliberate about it. Set a good bunch of metrics that you want to hit for 2022. So plan out 2022 in pretty good detail, and you want to have it written down. You just don't want thoughts floating around in your head. It needs to be written down, and you need to have an action plan. So usually what I try to do is I try to work on 2 or 3 initiatives a year per business. And then you may have like 4 or 5 tasks that you have to do for each one of those initiatives. Yeah. But write all that out, plan it out, put kind of deadlines for each of them. Do that, and then also spend some time working on your 3 to 5 year plan. Don't just think about what's going to happen next year. Start thinking about what's going to happen or where you want to be 3 to 5 years down the road, and make sure that meshes with what you're going to do this coming year. Yeah.
I was going to bring up the writing things down. That's huge for me. Not that I'm perfect at doing it, but I definitely have noticed. I don't do a yearly plan as well as I should, but whether it's a weekly or monthly or hey, my 5-year plan, if I have something written down, that makes it a lot easier for me to then break it down into manageable chunks. So your goal, if you're a driver, you're an employee driver, your goal might be, hey, I want to be an owner operator by the end of 2022. You can say that, but then the weeks go by, the months go by, you haven't really done anything about it. But when you write it down, then you can also write down, okay, so here's what I need to have done by March. Here's how much I want to have saved by June. Here's, I want to, here's how many episodes of Haulin Assets I will listen to in 48 hours. All of them, right? Hint, all of them.
In the military, we call that backwards planning.
Yeah, there you go.
You have your goal that you want to reach for, and then you backwards plan the steps that need to happen to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
it's a great method.
Yeah, great. Good impact tip. Anything else for today, Chris, or shall we call it cut and run?
I think that's a wrap.
My goodness, what a quick episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hope people enjoy these financials. I know they do. We get good feedback on them. So, congratulations on a great month. And thank you to everybody for listening. I'll just remind them to go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com, go to Facebook, give us reviews, and tell Chris how much you like my man bun.
I hope we get a few comments on that.
You weren't going to bring it up.
I was trying to be kind of nice, but now that you've brought it up, be ruthless. Listeners, be ruthless on Craig's man bun.
It's fine. It's fine. You know what? I still haven't quite come to terms with it. Because it's my pandemic hair, and you get this sunk cost into it, and at a certain point I'm just like, you know what, no, I'm not going to cut it because I want to see how long I can get this before it just drives me completely crazy.
Yeah, well, my grandpa wouldn't be very thrilled with your hair choice, we'll put it that way.
Wait, nobody's grandpa would be thrilled with my hair choice, let's be perfectly honest. All right, everybody, enough of this. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks, Chris.
See you then.